and welcome back to episode 20 of Golden Gulch. We have made it to the big 2-0, and in terms of impactfulness, this episode is probably going to be one of the more impactful episodes. Not just in what we're getting done today, even though we'll be getting done a good chunk, but what it's going to mean for the rest of the series. This episode is going to mainly revolve around the boat ride that we've worked on last episode. We're going to create the station, the queue, all of that theming that I wanted to put in for it is pretty much going to be done in this episode. And then for the next episode, we'll be moving on to the roller coaster and we'll be finishing that up. And then after that, we'll be moving on to the fourth and final area for this park. Now, I have been keeping that fourth area a huge secret. I haven't been telling you guys anything really much about it, and I plan to keep it a secret until that episode comes out, which I hopefully can get out as episode 22, and then that should take us all the way up to 25, where we can have our final episode and maybe even our live stream as episode 25. But that's getting a little bit too ahead of what we're doing in this episode. I was just kind of referencing how this is gonna kind of take us all the way into the next episodes. Now, you might have noticed that there has been a little bit of work done. I might have mentioned this already, but the pathing was changed, and the reason for that is in the last episode, I said that I didn't like how the exit worked, and I actually decided to draw that across the river. So now that when the boat comes down, people standing on the bridge can get splashed. That's a pretty common thing that you see in amusement parks with these water rides. So I wanted to incorporate that. And it's actually going to lead into that fourth area. Now, we're not going to be theming any of that, as I said, because I want to keep that a little bit of a secret. I'm just kind of laying out the path work so you guys can get a little bit of a feel for what is to come in that area. But now we have created the station already. I used just a really simple roof and supports and concrete base, and that's pretty much all I did there. So after that, I am moving on to a little bit more technical side. It's not really necessary in this game to do it. I think it's more realistic to have this. So on many of these rides that go through these water areas, there are commonly these concrete borders so that the boat will travel through, and basically it'll bump against the borders instead of going through a specific track. So that's something that I really wanted to simulate here, and it's a little bit of a tedious process, but I decided to go with it anyway, and I like how it turns out in the end. And then on top of that, it gives us a little bit of a wide variety for water parts, like elements that can splash the people that are going through. So we'll be putting that in throughout the episode as well. I didn't really cut out all of the triggering sequencing work, all that really, so you guys can see a little bit of that, and then obviously we'll be moving on to the next thing afterwards. So we did do a little bit of this, took a while, I would say, and it took a little bit of trial and error, and it is a little bit blocky in some parts, and that's just because there really wasn't any good curved parts that I could use. And then I also made this deep into the water so that it wouldn't look like it was just a little floating piece of concrete just in the water. So that's just kind of the thought process that kind of went behind this. And I made this a little bit wider than the boat just because they typically are, because if it wasn't wider than the boat, then the boat really wouldn't be able to fit through it and we'd have some problems. So that's just kind of the thought process here. For the bridge that goes across the water, that is next to the little straight part, I haven't really themed that. I haven't themed that in this episode. I plan to. It's not gonna be too crazy like that one that we did over going into the village. I'm thinking it's just gonna be a simple bridge with maybe some iron corrugated walls, I guess, to support it, and it's gonna be like a fence basically. So we'll see what happens with that. I might end up doing that off camera, but that's okay. I think it's not gonna be too important to the episodes of the series, and that way you guys can get to the more of the juicy stuff, like creating and theming these roller coasters and stuff. By the way, one thing that I will reveal for the next part of this series, we are going to have one more coaster in this park. So make sure you guys stay tuned for that. That should be coming up very soon. But now we are moving on to the water elements. And the reason why I have to put these in is because this boat obviously doesn't splash down into the water because it doesn't have that water section that I would want it to have. So this is me actually doing all of that sequencing stuff, putting all those splashes, and you saw those first ones like the at the initial drop are going slanted, and that's to get a good amount of that bridge wet. And another part problem that I might have been having in this part was the bridge might have been a little bit too close to the drop, so I had to make those angles super steep. And I don't know. It works out in the end, but I don't really know if I like how it came out in the end. So we are working on this sequencing. You just saw how I was doing the rest of those splashes, and now I'm writing it to actually make sure that it looks good. And you can see that those are squirting overhead. Some of them you can see, some of them you can't. I don't know why, it's just kind of how it went. But they all do function from a third person point of view. So that's great. But now we are moving on to one of the last things that we have to do into this series, or in this build. And the reason why it takes probably over half the episode, I would say, is just because of how tedious this actually was in making sure that everything was correctly placed. So, if you guys get a little bit motion sick from watching time lapses that move a lot, this one might not be the best for you, I would say, because I'm going to do a lot of moving. You can already see that happening right now to make sure that everything is in the perfect spot. There's not going to be any clipping with the rails on the side of the track, just to make sure that it's all perfect. I wanted this to make sure like it was this perfect just because I didn't want it to poke through the track, any of the railing, all of that stuff. And then I had my go at trying to do a custom roof. Didn't really work out well, but I did end up finding a nice custom made roof, or pre made roof, that I just used, and then we're just going to copy it around in this circle. But it's going to be a little bit harder than you would think. I thought this was going to be one of the easiest things to do in this build. Well, I mean, I knew it was going to be hard just because it wasn't the most simple thing to do like the station, but I didn't think it was going to be as hard as it was. And you can see I'm just getting that placement down, and the roof is actually a perfect fit for this track. And I think I got super lucky there with the fit and all that. And then we also have to go and check underneath and make sure that the supports actually look like it's supporting the building that we're creating here. So now it gets to more of the tedious spot. So we actually are. I tried to do the circle trick where you copy it over, and we're doing that right now, and then you copy it in a 180 degree, but it didn't work out. So I actually had to go through and control X or copy these and then manually move them to where they needed to be and then paste them. And some of them, there is some clipping with the roofs, but it's not too noticeable, especially from the ground. You wouldn't be able to notice. And there's little holes in the wood, which actually I think brings an extra thrill factor. Not really thrill, but more scenery factor to it, because the holes makes it more feel run down, or makes it feel run down more. That's the way to say it. But we're slowly but surely getting through it. The rest of this will probably be just copying and pasting this whole building around, and then we'll take a ride on it through the time lapse. Won't show the ride just yet because this ride's pretty much done. So we'll be doing that final cinematics pretty soon, actually. Um, in terms of next episode, I did reference this at the beginning of the episode. We're going to be working on the roller coaster. And if that doesn't take too long, really all I have to do for that is the station and the queue. And then after that, if it doesn't take in too long, I'll probably get the bridge done in that episode. And then we'll be leading right into the next episode. So that's something to be. We'll be leading right into the cinematics and the names and stuff. So actually, I have chosen a name for the roller coaster. It is going to be named Cobra from G-Force Productions. It's a really good name, and I love the backstory that he provided, or she, I don't know. But it really fits. It's like a car, and it's like the name of the car. It's like a Ford car. So it really fits with the theme of this area. As I said, I was going for a more transportation based almost. So this one I don't really know. I don't want to name it Cobra Falls just because that just I don't know, because like we're gonna go ride Cobra. Well, are you talking about the coaster or the water ride? So I'll probably name this something different. But after that, we'll have our final POVs for these rides, and we'll be moving into the next section, which hopefully won't take that long. Something else that I might do in the next episode is finish the layout of the train ride. I might not do that. That might be have to come after. Um, but now we're getting to the final stages of this episode. We're doing some lighting, and that's something that I haven't really touched on much in this episode. And again, this is where this kind of motion sickness goes crazy. I made sure that everything was perfect with these lights. I made them in between all those four beams that were crossing with the roofs, and it got a little kind of crazy. But it's I think it's a little tolerable. But now we have all those lights in. Nothing really else is light, so I might have to go through and light the park up, and that should be it. So with as we kind of finish up this episode, we have maybe one or two more things to do. I did make a little queue cover that we'll be moving on to soon. And I also did some lighting around the whole border of this water ride. So each I put these little the classic bulbs in there, and basically that just alternated, and that's kind of how I went off of. So we're gonna work on the station for a minute, and then we're gonna go to the queue, and we'll work on a little bit of the queue. It's basically gonna be the same exact layout as the station was. So we're gonna have the roof and then these steel pillars, and then that'll be it. And something else that I just added a little unique touch to is these bordered, or not bordered, but boarded, um, these boarded patches on this station, and these are also going to be in the queue. And basically, they just fill in that little gap between the supports and bring a little bit more depth into the station. So that's kind of what it's coming with. So here I am right here doing this station, not the station, the queue, and the roof is a little bit different than this actual station. The station, very weirdly enough, does not cover the whole station. It only covers where the boats are. This one, on the other hand, is a lot wider, so it covers a lot more width and not length. But here are the supports going in, and we'll get those wooded pieces going in, and then we'll be pretty much done with the episode. So hopefully you guys enjoyed this episode. It was a pretty decent one in terms of progress. Got a lot of stuff done. We finished a whole ride, so I'm be back at it again with the next roller coaster, and we'll be making our way to the end. I'm really excited. This was episode 20. We made it to 20, so hopefully we can get it done by 25. That's my new goal. So I'll keep you guys updated on what is to come. We are finishing this up with some supports on this bridge that we got going on here, and that's pretty much it. So hopefully you guys enjoyed. I know I did. Thank you guys so much for watching, and make sure to have an amazing day.